here we are. This is Sex Love Psychedelics, and I'm your host, Dr. Kat. Bringing you psychosexual conversations that will leave you intellectually turned on and hungry for more. And because you work in capital, and I know that that's one of your platforms, is talking about consciousness and capitalism and bringing shamanistic ideologies into the capital world. What has that process been like for you?
I was always more interested in mysticism than money in my early days. So after college, I moved to South America and I helped to start a school, which is called the Oasis Institute, which is an institute for healing arts. We were bringing things like Esalen body work to South America, very connected to the Esalen Institute in California.
Yeah.
And in my 20s, the only thing I cared about was human awakening. I was particularly curious to see if somebody like me could actually wake up. Like, is it just a storybook, or can I actually really do it? And so I was completely obsessed with awakening. And I spent, really, when I wasn't helping build the school or teaching in the school, I was sitting with spiritual teachers, primarily Advaita Vedanta teachers, non-dualism, spending a lot of time, in India and sabbaticals. And I basically got to the point where around the time I was 28, 29, where I had a very profound awakening. I happened to be in India. I met a beautiful teacher at the ashram of Brahmana Maharshi. And he sat down with me one afternoon and he started asking me, why are you here and what are you looking for? And it was kind of this sort of Socratic approach to awakening. Like, I started answering these questions. The next thing I knew, he was kind of leading each question deeper and deeper into my heart. And there was just this moment where my mind actually completely stopped and my heart sort of flowered, and I felt myself becoming like this embodiment of the divine feminine. And it just saturated my entire being. And I remember I looked at the man, and he's just this old guy in his 60s wearing orange. And I said, I'm going to eat you up now. Because I had literally embodied the divine feminine. So I was like Durga or Kali looking at this man, so I'm going to eat you now. I mean, it was really such a profound experience. And when I came out of that, for the first 2 weeks, I thought, I'm just going to live in India forever because I'm good. I really don't even like America that much. I'm done with America. And as that sort of settled into my nervous system more and more, then I began to see on the other side of it that I actually wasn't going to have a life where I was, apart from the West and living this kind of spiritual existence, that the time of awakening itself is changing, and it is the time of a more embodied feminine approach to awakening, which is more messy, which is going to touch all of the messy things, the power, the sex, the money. And in particular, I really thought maybe I could be the one to start to work with the money, because money at the time just seemed like a very non-God thing in my life. Money seemed quite here's God and spirituality, and money is this thing over here that it's even hard for me to remember because I've changed my concept of money so much, but it was money was bad. And I thought, well, what if I could actually somehow bring these things together? What would that journey look like? Could I do it? I mean, it's more like a curiosity. I mean, I had no idea what it was going to look like. So I came back to the States, and I got a job as a financial advisor, and I started to train in finance. I eventually went on to get my CFA charter, and I became astute in financial management. But it took a really long time for me to begin to have the tools of what it would look like for money to come together with consciousness, and even longer for me to begin to understand what role psychedelics could play inside of that conversation. So the past few years of my life have been, again, this is not a perfect experiment. This is don't try this at home. Like, don't do this at home. Don't do this by yourself. It's kind of the think tank of my life right now. Is there's this way that we've typically looked at money or held money, which is very much based in fear and scarcity.
Mhm.
And the approach is one very much of control. And my experiment is what happens if you begin to look at money through the eyes of emptiness. Like, what if you have a neutral energy field around money itself? Like, how would you get to that place of neutrality where you're no longer feeling aversion or attraction to it, but
Mhm.
actually just feeling it as a sort of neutral field of potential? And then what if it's the feminine? Because what was always bothering me in the world of money management was I was always sitting at these tables with all these guys that kept talking like they understood what was going to happen with an investment. They'd be like, well, the economy and like the financial projections. And I would be looking at it and I was like, no matter how skilled I got, I was like, how do these people think they know what's going to happen? Are they just smarter than me? And then finally I got to the point where I was like, I was actually quite like, how am I going to get smarter in investing? Like, what can I do? And I actually did go and do a mushroom based retreat around this time in my life. And it was inside of the mushrooms that I started to get this other set of operating instructions of how to work with money. And the mushrooms themselves were the ones that kind of showed me, actually, nobody knows what the fuck they're talking about.
Yeah.
Like, that's just theater. So we'd like to invite you to be vulnerable enough to drop the theater and say, I have no idea. So if you have no idea and you approach it from emptiness, then you're going to go into a much more looking for alignments of your capital. Like, what is your kind of life purpose and what is the energetic imprint that you want to put on the capital? When we invest capital, what we're really doing is we're really seeding our energy into the world. And so the more you can connect how you're spreading those seeds into the world, because it's really just energy, especially at this stage. I mean, money right now, we don't even touch money anymore. It's just digital numbers on your computer or your phone. So you have the money that you need for your essential daily life. And then what's extra outside of that, that's the money that you then begin to sort of infuse with your consciousness and spread into the world through your investing activities, the way that's the deepest reflection of your heart and how you want to align your in the world. It's a very different kind of investment paradigm. So that's been sort of the way that I've been working with it. And what I find psychedelics are so useful for is they're so good at not just self-knowledge and self-understanding, but pattern recognition, being able to look at, this is really more for private companies than for public companies, but to look at the energetic pattern of a company and what their products are and what they're trying to do in the world and the founder of the company. And like all of that kind of pattern recognition is enhanced greatly with, responsible use of something like mushrooms.
Well, that was fun. Thanks for tuning in, lovers. And if you want to experience more ecstasy and sexual liberation, head over to sexlovepsychedelics.com and learn about how you can join me for any one of my online or live events. And while you're there, grab my free guide on sex and psychedelics. Remember, this podcast is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Please contact your healthcare provider and local law before pursuing any of the products or psychedelics discussed. And one final note here. I make this show specifically for you. If you're loving the show, then be sure to leave me a review in iTunes or Spotify to let me know. Happy to be here and happy to serve. I'll see you next time on Sex Love Psychedelics.